Ryan Stewart had never been one to seek out excitement. His life had become a quiet routine of solitude and hard work, far removed from the noise and chaos of the world. The small cabin he called home sat at the edge of a dense forest, nestled in a remote corner of the planet. The town was a few miles away, its few inhabitants leading lives just as simple as his own. The only sounds were those of nature, the rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, and the occasional howl of a distant wolf. Ryan had been a soldier once, but that life was behind him now. The memories of war, the faces of those he had lost, had haunted him for years, and in his search for peace, he had found himself living alone, far from the bustling cities and the painful reminders of his past. His only company was the hum of machinery as he worked on his small mechanic shop, fixing broken-down engines and old vehicles that people in the nearby town couldn't fix themselves. It was an ordinary afternoon when everything changed. Ryan was sitting on the porch of his cabin, sipping his coffee, when a strange sound broke through the silence. At first, he thought it was a trick of the wind or perhaps a bird overhead, but the noise grew louder, like the roar of an engine, followed by a deafening crash. The ground beneath his feet shook as if a bomb had gone off nearby. His heart raced as he jumped to his feet, looking around in confusion. He knew something was wrong. Without thinking, he grabbed his jacket and ran toward the direction of the noise. The forest was thick with trees, but he was familiar with every trail and path. He followed the sound of the crash, pushing through the underbrush until he saw the wreckage. A small, sleek craft lay broken on the ground, smoking and charred, its metallic surface glinting in the sunlight. Ryan's first instinct was to turn back, but something inside him urged him to approach. As he got closer, he saw a figure lying beside the wreckage. It was a woman. Her dark hair was matted with dirt and blood, and her body was limp, as if she had been knocked unconscious by the crash. Ryan knelt beside her, his heart pounding in his chest. She was dressed in strange clothing, a sleek bodysuit that shimmered in the light, unlike anything he had ever seen. He hesitated for a moment before reaching out to check her pulse. To his relief, it was steady, though weak. She was alive. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of what was happening. He had lived a quiet, isolated life, but he had heard stories, rumors about strange sightings and unexplained phenomena. Could this woman be from one of those stories? Was she a survivor of some kind of accident? He knew he had to act fast. The woman was in no condition to help herself, and the wreckage was still smoking, threatening to catch fire. Without thinking, Ryan lifted her gently in his arms. She was surprisingly light, though he could feel the heat radiating from her body. He carried her back to his cabin, his mind spinning with questions. Who was she? Where had she come from, and why had her ship crashed here in the middle of nowhere? Inside, he laid her on his bed, working quickly to clean the blood from her wounds and check for any other injuries. Her breathing was shallow, and her skin was warm to the touch, but there was something unusual about her. Her features were striking, too perfect almost. Her face was a combination of human and something else. Her skin, though pale, had an almost ethereal glow to it, and her eyes, when they fluttered open for a moment, glowed faintly, an unnatural shade of green. She didn't speak at first. Instead, she lay still, her eyes closed as if she were in some sort of trance. Ryan wasn't sure what to do, but instinct told him to wait. After a few minutes, she stirred, her eyes opening slowly. Ryan was taken aback by the intense gaze that met his. She looked at him with a mix of confusion and wariness, but there was also something else, something he couldn't quite place. "You saved me?" Her voice was soft, almost melodic, and had a strange accent, as if she were speaking through a filter. Her words felt out of place, almost mechanical, but there was no mistaking the sincerity in them. Ryan nodded, unsure of what to say. "You were hurt. Your ship crashed." The woman's eyes flickered toward the window, where the faint outline of the wrecked ship could still be seen in the distance. A look of concern crossed her face, but it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. She turned her gaze back to him, her expression guarded. "Where am I?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just outside of town," Ryan replied. "You're safe here for now." She didn't respond at first, her gaze drifting toward the ceiling as if she were contemplating something. Then slowly she looked back at him. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You've saved my life." Ryan could sense there was more to her words than she was letting on. Her gratitude seemed genuine, but there was something in her eyes, a hidden sadness, a flicker of something darker, that made him uneasy. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this woman than met the eye, but he wasn't about to turn her away. "I'm Ryan," he said, offering a small smile. "And you are?" The woman hesitated for a moment, her brow furrowing as if she were searching for the right words. "Zara," she finally said. "Zara of a place far from here." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "A place far from here?" Zara nodded slowly as if the words were difficult to say. "Yes," she replied. "I've come from far away to learn about your planet." Ryan blinked, not sure he had heard her correctly. "Learn about our planet? What do you mean?" Zara's expression grew serious, her eyes narrowing as if she were deciding how much to reveal. "I'm not like you," she said softly, as if the words held a weight she wasn't ready to bear. "I'm not from this world." Ryan was taken aback, but he didn't let his surprise show. He had heard stories of alien encounters, but he never imagined they would be true. "What are you saying?" he asked, his voice a little strained. "I am from another world," Zara said, her voice tinged with a quiet sadness. "I came here on a mission, but something has gone wrong. I need your help." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. "A mission? What kind of mission?" Zara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned her head away as if she were deep in thought. Her gaze drifted toward the window, and for a moment, Ryan could see the weight of something heavy pressing down on her. "I can't explain everything just yet," she said softly, her voice barely audible. "But I promise you, Ryan, I never meant to cause you harm." Ryan didn't know what to say. His mind was racing, trying to piece together the fragments of what Zara had just told him. She was an alien, a stranger from another world, and yet here she was, lying in his bed, her life in his hands. But despite the confusion, there was something about Zara that drew him in. Something in her eyes, in the way she held herself, told him that she wasn't dangerous. At least not in the way he'd imagined. For the first time in years, Ryan didn't feel so alone. He nodded, taking a deep breath. "You're safe here for now, but we'll have to figure this out together." Zara met his gaze, and for a moment, something shifted between them. A silent understanding, an unspoken bond that neither could ignore. And so, in that quiet cabin in the woods, the unexpected journey began. The journey of two people, one from Earth, the other from the stars, who would soon find that the greatest challenge wasn't in the vastness of space, but in the strange new emotions that were growing between them. Days passed since Zara's crash. The small cabin in the woods had become a refuge, not just from the dangers of the outside world, but from the world itself. Ryan had become Zara's caretaker, offering a semblance of peace, yet there was an unease that neither of them could shake. Zara was grateful for the shelter Ryan had provided, but each day that passed made her wonder if she was making the right decision by staying. She could still hear the voices of her people in her mind, reminding her of her mission, of the fate of her home planet if she didn't succeed. Ryan, on the other hand, had begun to notice the subtle shifts in Zara. She would stare out the window for hours, her mind clearly elsewhere. Sometimes she would seem almost lost in thought, as if the weight of some invisible burden was pressing on her. She never spoke about where she came from or what her mission entailed, but Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that Zara was keeping something from him. He had tried to probe for answers, but every time he asked, she would deflect with an enigmatic smile or a change of subject. He could tell she was struggling with something, but he didn't know how to help. The connection between them was undeniable, and each day it grew stronger. There were moments when their eyes would meet, and for a brief instant, everything else would fade away. They were two souls bound by an invisible thread, and neither of them knew what to make of it. Zara's feelings for Ryan were complicated. She had come to Earth with a single purpose, to observe, to learn, and to report back to her people. But as the days went by, she found herself torn between duty and something far more powerful, love. The emotions she felt for Ryan were foreign to her, something she had never expected. In her world, feelings like this were often seen as a weakness, something to be controlled. But with Ryan, it was different. His presence made her feel human, and that terrified her. She had tried to bury her emotions to focus on the task at hand. But when Ryan smiled at her, or when he laughed softly at something she said, it was as if the world outside of this cabin didn't matter anymore. She had spent her life following orders, never questioning the intentions of her superiors. But now, in the silence of Ryan's cabin, she began to question everything. Who were her people, really? What was their true agenda? And why did she feel this sense of belonging here with Ryan? One evening, after a long day of working on the cabin's engine, Ryan returned to find Zara sitting by the window. her gaze fixed on the horizon. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden light over the forest. The light made Zara's face glow, and for a moment Ryan was struck by how beautiful she looked. "You're quiet today," Ryan said softly, stepping inside. Zara turned her head slowly, her eyes meeting his. There was a deep sadness in them, a sadness Ryan had come to recognize over the past few days. "I'm thinking," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan walked over and sat beside her, his expression gentle. "About what?" Zara hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of the window. "About my mission, about what comes next." Ryan frowned, unsure of how to respond. "You're still thinking about leaving?" Zara's gaze flickered toward him, and she let out a long breath. "I didn't expect this," she admitted. "I didn't expect to feel like this." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. "Like what?" She met his eyes, her voice trembling. "Like I belong here with you." Ryan's breath caught in his throat. The way she said it, the vulnerability in her voice, struck him harder than he expected. He wanted to reach out, to tell her that he felt the same way, that he didn't want her to leave. But he also knew the weight of her mission. If she was truly here to observe Earth, then that meant she would have to leave eventually, and he wasn't sure if he could handle that. "I don't want you to leave either," Ryan said, his voice low and sincere. Zara closed her eyes, a soft tear slipping down her cheek. "But I have a duty to my people, to my mission. I can't just abandon them." Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder, trying to offer comfort, but inside he felt a sense of panic rising. "But what if your mission isn't what you thought it was? What if your people aren't the ones who need saving?" Zara shook her head, her voice shaking with emotion. "You don't understand, Ryan. I've been trained my entire life for this, to serve, to follow orders. This is who I am." Ryan squeezed her shoulder, his voice firm. "You're more than just your mission. You're more than just the orders you've been given." Zara looked at him, her eyes wide. She wanted to believe him, to believe that she could be more than the soldier she had been trained to be. But the truth was, she didn't know how to be anything else. As the days went by, Zara found herself growing more conflicted. The more time she spent with Ryan, the harder it became to remember why she was here. She could feel her heart pulling her in a direction she wasn't sure she could follow. But she knew that whatever choice she made, it would have consequences. Her people wouldn't let her go easily, and neither would Ryan. One afternoon, a sudden change in the atmosphere made the tension between them even more palpable. Ryan had gone into town to get supplies, leaving Zara alone in the cabin. She was sitting on the porch, watching the trees sway in the wind when she saw something in the distance, a figure standing at the edge of the forest. Her heart skipped a beat. It was Ryan. Zara's training kicked in. She immediately stood up, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the figure. It was too far to make out any details, but the way the person stood, motionless, sent a chill down her spine. The figure wasn't human. Without thinking, Zara rushed inside, locking the door behind her. Her heart was pounding in her chest as she scanned the room for anything she could use to defend herself. She couldn't risk being caught off guard. Not again. Moments later, Ryan returned, looking confused as he approached the cabin. He knocked on the door. "Zara, it's me." Zara opened the door cautiously, her eyes scanning the area around them. She didn't speak immediately, her mind racing. She couldn't tell Ryan what she had seen, not yet. But the truth was, she had been lying to him all along. Her mission wasn't just about observation. It was about taking control of Earth. And if her people found her here, they would do whatever it took to complete that mission, no matter the cost. As the door closed behind them, Zara realized that the danger was far greater than she had ever imagined. Her people would come for her, for Ryan and for Earth. And when they did, she would have to choose between her loyalty to her people and her love for the man who had shown her what it meant to truly be human. The days seemed to blur together as Zara and Ryan lived in a fragile peace, a peace that was starting to feel more like a dream. Every moment they shared, every glance, every quiet evening together in the cabin reminded them both of the tension they carried. It was no longer just about survival or the unknowns of the mission Zara had once sworn to complete. It was about a love neither of them had expected, one that neither of them knew how to handle. Zara's internal battle had reached its peak. Every time Ryan smiled at her, or when their hands brushed together, it felt as if the world itself was telling her to stay. She wanted to stay. The feelings she had for Ryan were not just the byproduct of days spent in isolation. No, this was real. But her loyalty to her people, to her mission, was something that ran deep. She had been trained for this her entire life. To abandon her mission now would be to betray everything she had ever known, everything she had ever believed in. But the more Zara thought about it, the more uncertain she became about her people's true motives. Her instructions had always been clear: gather intelligence, watch Earth, and report back. But as time passed, she had begun to question the reasoning behind it all. Why was Earth being watched so closely? What were her superiors truly planning? And why had she never been allowed to speak to humans, to understand them as individuals? Ryan, on the other hand, was starting to sense the inevitable. He could see it in her eyes, hear it in the way she spoke. The distance she tried so hard to hide had become impossible to ignore. He knew that sooner or later Zara would have to leave. He didn't know what kind of future they could have together, if there even was a future for them. The weight of her secret hung between them like a wall, and no matter how many times they spoke, no matter how many hours they spent talking about everything and nothing, it remained. It was the morning after the mysterious figure had appeared at the edge of the forest. Ryan had gone to town again, this time taking extra precautions, feeling an unease he couldn't quite explain. Zara stayed behind, staring out the window again, lost in thoughts that made her heart ache. She had tried to keep up the facade, to pretend she wasn't as torn as she was, but deep down, she knew her time here was running out. The longer she stayed with Ryan, the harder it would be to leave. As the hours passed, a sudden feeling of dread settled over her. The forest, the place she had once found so peaceful, now seemed full of dangers. She could feel her people's presence, even though she hadn't seen them. Their eyes were on her, even if they hadn't arrived yet. She had been trained to feel this way, to anticipate the threat, to trust in her mission above all else. But now, as she sat there, her eyes scanning the trees, she realized she wasn't just looking for her people. She was looking for an excuse to stay. Ryan returned in the late afternoon, his face tight, his expression more serious than Zara had seen in weeks. He walked into the cabin with purpose, his hands clenching at his sides. "Zara," he began, his voice low, "I think we need to talk." Zara stood up, her heart pounding in her chest. She had feared this moment for days, but now that it had arrived, she found herself unsure of what to say. She knew the conversation was inevitable, but she didn't know if she was ready for it. "Ryan, he cut her off. "No, listen to me. I don't know how much longer we can pretend this is going to work. You're not the woman you were when you first came here. I see it in your eyes. You're changing, Zara. But you're still holding on to something I don't understand." Zara's breath caught in her throat. She could feel her chest tighten with emotion, the truth about her mission finally threatening to break free, but she wasn't ready to tell him everything. She couldn't. "I have to go," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Ryan shook his head. "No, not like this. You don't have to leave, Zara. Whatever your mission is, whatever they told you to do, it doesn't have to come before us. You don't have to do this alone." Zara's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not alone, Ryan. But I'm not just leaving for me. You don't know what's at stake. You don't understand what's happening out there." She gestured toward the window, her hand trembling. "I'm not just an observer. I'm part of something much bigger, something that could destroy everything we've built here." Ryan took a step closer, his eyes searching hers. "Then tell me, Zara, tell me what you're not saying." She shook her head. "I can't. You wouldn't understand. You'd never forgive me." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the weight of her secret. Ryan didn't speak, but his heart broke. He had always known that Zara's presence here wasn't just coincidence. He had suspected that she was hiding something, but now, hearing her words, it was as if a part of him had shattered. Zara turned away, unable to meet his gaze. The pain of leaving him behind was more than she could bear. "I have to do this," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm sorry, Ryan, but you'll be safer without me." Before Ryan could respond, a loud, sudden noise from outside the cabin made them both jump. It sounded like the crack of a branch snapping underfoot, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps, multiple footsteps. Zara's heart raced, and she immediately stepped toward the window, her senses sharp. "They're here," she muttered. Ryan stepped beside her, his hand gripping the edge of the wooden frame. "Who's here?" Her eyes widened. "My people, they've come for me." Before Ryan could react, a booming voice called out from outside. "Zara, come out and face the consequences of your betrayal." Ryan froze, a chill running down his spine. He didn't understand what was happening, but he knew it wasn't good. Zara turned toward him, her face pale. "This is it," she said, her voice shaking with fear. "They'll kill us both if they find us." Ryan didn't have time to think. Instinct took over. "We have to run, now." They bolted for the back door, but as they reached it, it crashed open with a violent force, revealing a group of armed figures standing in the doorway. Zara's people, aliens from a distant world, their eyes glowing with authority. The leader of the group stepped forward, his gaze cold and unforgiving. "You've made a grave mistake, Zara," the leader said. "The penalty for treason is death." Zara's heart sank. She had known this moment would come, but she had never truly prepared for it. She had hoped for a way out, a way to keep Ryan safe, but now there was no choice. Ryan stepped forward, positioning himself between Zara and the aliens. "You'll have to go through me," he said, his voice filled with determination. The leader smiled, an almost mocking expression on his face. "We don't want to kill you, human, but if you insist on standing in our way, we'll do what we must." The tension in the cabin was unbearable. Zara's hands shook as she reached for Ryan's arm. "No," she whispered urgently. "Get away, you don't understand, they'll kill you." Ryan shook his head, his eyes fixed on the aliens. "I won't let them take you." In that moment, as the leader of the alien group raised his hand to signal an attack, something inside Zara snapped. She realized that she couldn't let Ryan fight for her. She couldn't allow him to die because of her mistake. With a swift motion, she stepped forward, standing tall in front of the aliens. "I will not go back with you," she declared, "and I will not let you hurt him." The leader paused, studying her. "You choose this human over your people? You choose Earth over your own kind?" Zara's gaze hardened. "Yes, I choose love over loyalty. I choose humanity over blind obedience." Ryan stood beside her, his heart swelling with pride. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't alone, and neither was Zara.